Hi everyone, how are you? Hope you're doing well. As you can see, and as you heard from that introduction, my name is Matt. Um, Hopefully there's people there on the other end. It's a bit strange, I know, probably for everyone these days, of just kind of speaking into a microphone, staring at a screen, and hopefully connecting with other people. So yeah, I appreciate you joining today. I'm very excited to be here, albeit a bit of a different experience. I've had the fortune to do presentations and conferences all over the world, but nothing quite like this. So yeah, here we go. We'll dive into it. I think you can ask questions throughout. Feel free to put those in the comments. I don't exactly know how the setup is on your end, but yeah, feel free to put them in there, and I'll get to them as they come in, if it makes sense, or you know, throughout the presentation, or at the end. So I'll jump into it here now for you. As you can see, my name is Matt. A little bit maybe misleading from the initial introduction, but really talking here about video games and the future of sports marketing. So very exciting kind of times, I guess you could say, around video games these days. They've been extremely busy as more people are staying inside with all the social distancing and quarantine. So we've seen a huge spike in our business, which has been absolutely fantastic in many regards. It's been very good for business, if you will, although not great, obviously, for our society at large. So hopefully they're helping keep people safe and social distance and all that sort of stuff. But today really wanted to dive into a little bit of what, you know, sports marketing is looking like, and how different platforms are utilizing video games as kind of a new frontier when it comes to marketing and reaching their audiences. So it's a bit of a new frontier for many people. They're still learning about what video games are and how to access them and how to utilize their brand on it. So dive into that a little bit today. But first, just wanted to give you a little bit of background on myself. So here I am many years ago. Won't disclose how many, but I grew up playing sports. I played college basketball in Canada at Wilfrid Laurier University and Douglas College in Vancouver. I had the fortune of playing there and you know, fulfilling a lifelong dream for myself of getting to play at the highest level in Canada and play against some fantastic players and players that have played all over the world. So sport has been a huge vehicle for me in my life and achieving a lot of the things I wanted. So it's always been, you know, a really, really big part of who I am and what I do. And now I'm lucky enough that, you know, I get to work in sports as well, which is probably pretty rare for many people. But you know, it's kind of given me this path and been able to take sport and do a lot of different things with it. One of the big things that changed me was this trip that I took overseas. I went to South Africa and Ghana after my college career, and I was able to work with some at-risk youth in both countries and teach them about the sport, about basketball, about soccer, and how not just to play the games, but how they can teach you life skills, from teamwork to discipline to time management, and then also about, you know, social issues that were happening in those countries. This picture here, like, we're actually giving out used sporting equipment from Vancouver that was shipped down to South Africa, and we're providing jerseys and shoes and all that for folks that really didn't have the opportunity to get new shoes or new equipment. And, you know, it's maybe, you know, we take it for granted here in North America, but, you know, we show up to a game at our school and, you know, we have jerseys provided for us. In other countries, that's not even the case. They don't even have jerseys to distinguish who's on which team. So it was a pretty eye-opening experience for me, and one that shaped a lot of, you know, the future for me. Really changed me from looking very intrinsically and almost living this kind of selfish life that was focused on myself and what I could achieve, to really looking more outwardly of how I could support and help other people. And one of the ways I saw the opportunity to do this was actually through business. And I think we're seeing it a lot more today of businesses doing social good and making impact in our communities, definitely over the last month or so, with the Black Lives Matter movement and talking about, you know, the different impacts that we can make on our society. We've seen businesses take a stand, but this was pretty rare even 10 years ago. And so I wanted to kind of make an impact, and I started a business called Disrupt Speakers Bureau. This was an opportunity for me to bring ideas to life and step out and step forward, really, to push some boundaries across different sectors. So whether it's business, whether it's social impact, whether we talked about mental health, we wanted to bring these conversations to the biggest stages that we possibly could. And I think it was a really important time for us to be able to do that, even more so than now, because it wasn't happening as much as it is. You know, Instagram, albeit to say, wasn't a thing when I started this business. We didn't have the platforms that we do today. So, you know, starting the Speakers Bureau is really important to be able to give people that were having positive social messages a platform to be able to speak. And, you know, we worked at, or we spoke at different events, from, you know, being at the UN to South by Southwest, one of the biggest festivals in the world. And then we went to massive companies as well, things like Pepsi, Nike, Pfizer, of all places. So we really crossed different boundaries. And then we worked a lot with college and university students to really give them a platform and an opportunity to collaborate with one another and speak about some of the big issues that were taking place. So this really framed a lot of what I had done. I'd never run a business before. I was about 24 when I started this. So I had an undergraduate degree, but really I had an idea. I had an idea that I wanted to make an impact, and I had an idea of how I wanted to do that through utilizing talks and being able to use audiences and get people to come together. And so this was a platform to be able to do that for me. But what I really think it was for me was my real life MBA experience. You know, I didn't obviously get a diploma or a piece of paper at the end of it or a nice ceremony, but what I did get was a wealth of experience. I got to work with world leaders across, you know, different industries, and it really shaped a lot of my thinking and what I wanted to do moving forward, which ultimately led me to an experience of a lifetime in no other ways. But for those of you that don't know sports too well, especially in Canada, this is Steve Nash. Steve Nash is a two-time NBA MVP, so he was voted the best player in the NBA 2 years in a row. He's from Victoria, BC. He's about 6'1", obviously a white guy. And for those of you that do watch the NBA, you know just how rare that is to have such a small kind of guy be so successful in a league where most players are 6'5" and above. Steve was somebody that I looked up to growing up. He was someone that I saw as doing the right thing, both on the basketball court and off. He led a very interesting life, and one that I was very aware of, given growing up in Vancouver and the proximity to him, and had a lot of overlap. So I actually got approached by him and his group to run their new company. So they had started a fitness company and their fitness brand, and they had come to me to basically take that to market for them. It was an amazing experience to be able to work in sports, for one, amazing experience to get to connect with Steve, someone I'd looked up to for many years. Ultimately, we took this brand, I created this brand and took it to market, and was really in charge of sales and marketing. That's what it comes down to with any new company. Sales is always going to be number one, and marketing is primarily how you get those sales. So for me, it was a tremendous experience. I got to work with some of the best people in sports, from different agents and agencies to NBA, NHL, NFL, professional soccer, you name it. Was able to work with so many great professional athletes and teams that it really provided me this tremendous experience moving forward. And similar to the previous experience with my agency, it was that continuation of my real life MBA. Now, this experience maybe didn't end the way I wanted to. We didn't end up, selling this business and going too far with it. I ended up actually choosing to leave the business relatively soon after, about 18 months after we started. But it was something for me that was, I got to achieve a lot and really look forward to. It was something that taught me a lot, just like that MBA sort of experience. It taught me a lot, especially from an entrepreneurial kind of standpoint. Looking at the sports marketing landscape, it taught me that, there aren't too many things that I was kind of missing, which was fantastic. And it gave me these 3 keys from a business and marketing standpoint. The number one thing being, understand what your customers and client wants and why they want it. Number 2 is find mutual ground and connect the dots. And then 3, be passionate about the subject. And for me, these 3 keys, they're often overlooked, yet they seem so obvious, I think, to most people as you look at them. Sometimes it can be tough and awkward to ask these questions to a client directly and say, what do you want? Like, how can I help you get there? But it's arguably one of the most important ones, so you can actually serve that audience. Number 2, finding mutual ground and connecting the dots. Often people just kind of find out what people want, but they're not willing to do that next leg of the work and actually connect the dots and understand how they can make those synergies. And then 3, I think, is very obvious, be passionate about the subject, but you'd be amazed at how many people don't love it and just kind of get into it for the wrong reasons. That being said, it's even better when you can be passionate about the subject and also be a subject matter expert. And I think that is severely lacking, at least in the sports marketing industry. Which takes me to today. As I kind of alluded to, I work at EA Sports in the video game industry. Surprise for many people, I am not a big gamer. I actually didn't really play video games much over the last kind of 10 years. I played in high school and college pretty casually with friends, so always knew about them, was around them. But in that time, for any of you that have played video games recently, they're quite a bit different than what they were 10 years ago. So it's been a really interesting learning experience for me. It's been a lot to learn, of course, but also very, very interesting. So I work across our NHL, UFC, and NBA franchises at EA Sports. I work with external partnerships or external partners on marketing activation. So that could be everything from brands like Nike and Adidas or OVO to music partners, to athletes, to teams, you name it. I kind of bridge that gap between our teams and find, those similarities and those synergies of how can we actually work together to expose both brands and elevate both brands. So when I'm looking at partnerships specifically in this role, there's a few things I look for, which kind of alluded back to those 3 keys before, and we can kind of get back into that. But it's interesting to look maybe back at where we've come from. This is what sports marketing used to be. It was slap the best athlete on a big billboard, and from there that would sell the product. And I think, Michael Jordan is the perfect example of this. He was really the one that brought sports marketing to the forefront and gave people that idea that you could utilize a celebrity or utilize an athlete to sell your product. So things have come a long way from this in many ways, but they're also very much the same. However, the industries are completely different. So you look at the gaming kind of industry and where that leads us. As you can see here, these numbers are actually a little bit down. This is from May 2008, but by the end of 2009, the gaming industry was $150 billion. All right, so when you look at music, you look at movies, you look at TV, it's basically all 3 of those things combined. That is the market segment for this. So it just goes to show how big and how much of an opportunity there is within gaming. And I'd arguably say that, sports marketing specifically has really touched on TV, it's touched on movies, it touched on music, but gaming is one of these kind of untapped opportunities, I would say. And I think many of the reasons for this is because people don't know how to do it, or they're not up to speed with just how big of an industry it is. To give you a sense, on the right, we have a major esports player, Ninja, who's making over $500,000 a month just through advertising. But he's relatively a niche figure within cultural society. The other image there is one of an esports arena. as you can see, it's packed, just like a major sporting event. People are hounding to these events and wanting to get involved with esports. So how do we bring these two together and bridge the gaps? Well, unfortunately, it's not like this. So just like that other image I showed you of Michael Jordan, the sports industry is still very much revolving on logo slaps, what I would call, and naming rights and endorsements, and things that I feel are just a little bit lazy within the industry. And I know there's a number of reasons for this, but I think as sports marketers or as marketers in general, we need to do a little bit better of a job of telling a story and getting our fans more engaged in it. You can see a variety of different things here. Whether it's in naming rights at a stadium, you can see Yankee Stadium there, and it has, just on first glance, about 10 different advertisers there. It's hard to really understand the impact that Ford could have from that. Really what they're trying to do is just have as much awareness as humanly possible, which is what most brands are looking to do. Now, it's really tough for smaller brands to then cut through that clutter. Right, as you see, all these are really major brands, whether it's on a jersey or it's in a stadium or on a jumbotron. These are major brands, so you can't even compete. And for an example, like with EA Sports and NHL, we get approached by teams all the time to do in-arena advertising. But for me, it's just not worth the cost, and nor do we have the money to be able to do that. But when you're looking at the effectiveness of it, it's not quite there for us. And we're looking at different ways to innovate within the space. So when I'm looking at developing a partnership and moving things forward, I'm looking at a couple of key things here for us of how we're actually going to interact with our audience. These are how we want to do that, whether it's authenticity, whether we want to connect, we want to tell a story, we want to integrate, we want to be have interaction. So rather than just slapping a logo somewhere, we want to be able to interact with our fan. And I think that's really an important part of this, is that too many people are just doing these logo slaps. They're not connecting. They're not telling a story, and they're not interacting with their community and with their fan base. So that's really what we're trying to achieve here. I think one of the words that stands out to me here is topical as well. With digital media where it's at these days, you need to be topical. You have to be relevant every day because things change so quickly. They change on a dime with the news and where we're going, and we have the ability to do that with digital media. So why not utilize that to your brand's advantage rather than just, again, slapping a logo there? So again, with partnerships, we're looking for clear synergies between the brands. We enjoy working with one another. I think that's something that's often overlooked. I don't want to do it just for the sake of doing it, but I want to be able to do so with folks that I enjoy. I don't want to have to keep struggling to, move my brand forward and move your brand forward. Like it's not a good synergy if you keep battling with one another. And to the last point, no one's compromising. I think the most important thing here with marketing and sports marketing specifically is, and then even more so with video games, is no one wants to compromise in this situation. The agreement needs to be relevant for both parties or all multiple parties. So I think that's a really important one that people often overlook as well. So getting into specifics of the video game kind of industry, I know Fortnite is definitely a popular game. Maybe that's a bit of an understatement. But we've seen a ton of stuff happening in Fortnite. Probably the best example of this is with the Travis Scott concerts that just took place within the game. I know they weren't advertised too heavily. We knew that he was going to be on the soundtrack, but he would just pop up, right? Like he came into the game and he would just have these concerts. And it happened at a perfect time during COVID and quarantine, in the sense that so many people were able to rally behind it. But I think this is the future. This is where it's going with not just sports marketing, but video game marketing. There's so much that is capable within the games that it's just our imagination that's what's really limiting in all of this. It's not the technology or or what's capable in there. It's really just what we can come up with. Now, I thought this was one of the best examples of partnership and relevancy and bringing things to life and being able to connect with your audience in the best way within a game. And so for us, we're looking at what's next. What's the future of sports marketing? Are we able to put sample products into a game? Is it real life rewards? How are we harnessing technology? And so I think there are a lot of different opportunities that we can do with this. Talking about sample products, something that we've talked to with brands is, hey, do you have a new shirt that you're not sure if it's going to sell? Well, why don't you put it in the game? You can see what people's reactions are, see what they talk about on social with it. We can even tell you how many people are utilizing that shirt in the game versus one of your other known shirts. So that's one way that we can kind of do it. Real life rewards, I think, is another great way to tie in, the virtual world with reality. There's a lot of different mechanics to this. I know 2K, NBA 2K, the basketball game, does this a little bit, where you can actually the shoes that you get in the game, you can get in real life through Nike. I think you'll start to see that a lot more through the rewards and things that you're buying in game. I think that's kind of the future, if you will, of it. And I think there's also these opportunities to harness technology. Like, how are we doing this? Can we, for an example, we have it here with FIFA. Can we take this technology and take real life events and plug it into your game? The example of FIFA is top right there. There's the chips that go in your shoes, and every shot that you take actually powers up your XP in our mobile FIFA game. So there's ways to connect back and forth with that. So there's some really cool things there. A couple other examples from actually our NHL franchise this year. Some very different ones. We worked with Adidas to do some crossover marketing with other athletes. There was Kyle Lowry, Juju Smith-Schuster, Adam Thielen, so NBA and NFL athletes that were featured within the game. Not only in the game, but they had their own clothing. And then the Adidas was able to sell their clothing. So you're looking at the different layers and how that supported different levels of reality for a game and connected with our community in very different ways. In a totally different way, we worked with Barstool, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with their channel Spit and Chicklets. And we basically gave them the reins to be able to bump up or bring down different players' ratings. And we gave them pretty loose direction on it. We said, if you really like a guy and he treated you to a nice dinner, well then great, bump him up. But if he, didn't want to meet up with you when he came to your town, or, he scored a goal on you, well, you can bump him down as well. So we took this kind of unique and creative approach to be able to play with players' ratings, which we know is a really big part of the game, and then attached it to real world events as well. And I think one of the coolest things was they did this on their podcast. So we're, again, hitting a different medium, something that we know is super popular within the world of hockey and the pop culture of podcasting, and said, how do we utilize a podcast to actually advertise our game and not stick to the traditional verticals that we typically see? So these are a few examples that we've done over here at EA. I think we're going to continue. You'll continue to see a lot more of this as we develop new product, as we develop our partnerships, and we get more creative with how we utilize these. We're really excited. We're announcing a new game tomorrow that I've been working on pretty feverishly over here. And even how we're announcing that is very different, and utilizing a lot of different mediums to be able to tell the story. And so I think these are this is the forefront, really. I think we're just scratching the surface with sports marketing, but I think it's going to take this creativity. It's going to take folks to think outside the box and really connect with one another and the brands that they want to connect with in order to make this happen. So I hope that gives you a bit of an insight into kind of what the future is, maybe, of sports marketing, where it's going, and specifically how it ties back to video games. So again, not sure who's on the other end there, or if I was just talking to myself for the last 20 minutes. But happy to answer any questions from the audience, from you guys at home, and would love to maybe hear from you guys of what your thoughts are on video games and advertising in it, or sports marketing as a whole, or any questions about my kind of journey as well. I'm just getting a chat here. I don't see any questions coming in just yet. I'm not sure if there are any or not. I'll just wait a few minutes here to give you some time maybe to type them into the chat. Oh, great. Here's one. So the question is, how does this affect marketing to non-gamers who would not be exposed to your efforts? Are there other sources? Yeah, so this is a good question. I think something for us that we need to really look into as marketing for gamers, that we don't speak specifically just to the gamers. I think that was one of the interesting things of our the podcast that I was just referencing. That's not necessarily directed just to gamers, right? Like, that is directed to a larger audience, and for sure some of them play games, but also many of them wouldn't play games. So we're always looking at that to make sure that we're hitting a variety of different places, that we're not just talking to the video game audience, because as a business, we need to ensure that we're also getting new customers. And so that new customer acquisition means that we can't just talk to the same people over and over. We're very conscious of that. So yeah, very good question. So next question here. Other than yearly updates on player rankings, how much room is there to keep a franchise like FIFA or NHL growing in terms of the video game? How else do you keep the audience? Yeah, this is a really good question as well. And so for those of you that don't know, most of our sports games are iterative titles, so they're updated yearly. And so what happens with that is, the fan base can sometimes get a little bit, they'll challenge us, and maybe rightfully so, that they'll challenge us on why is this a new game? Why is it better this year, other than, as referenced in the question, other than the player rankings? So that's been a very interesting thing for me to kind of learn, is this, because in a sense we are our own competition. We compete with ourselves because we have a new game coming out every year. But I would just say that, in terms of the franchise, our teams do work on different modes within the game. This year, for instance, you'll see different modes within NHL and for FIFA, for that matter, that should relate back to our audience. Graphics are always getting updated. Player likeness is getting upgraded. And then over 2 or 3 years, you'll see even more changes happen. So I know obviously we're working towards the new generation of consoles coming out. So that's going to increase even the leap of a lot of the graphics that are coming. But very good question, and something we have to challenge ourselves to do. So the last one is just the question, can you tell us anything that nobody knows about EA Sports? I don't know if there's anything off the top of my mind that you know about. I would say that one of the coolest things about working at EA Sports is just seeing the motion capture. EA here in Vancouver has the largest motion capture studio in the world. We use it for all of our games, and that's pretty exciting to be able to go see. So I don't know if that's anything that you didn't know, but one of the most exciting things probably about working. So thanks so much for those questions. I think that you guys probably have access to my social accounts, so feel free to reach out if you have any other questions or comments. Always keen to chat. So thanks so much for having me today. Stay safe. Be well, and we look forward to hopefully getting out of these weird times somewhat soon. So thanks again.